Okay, so now we've set ourselves up a bunch of presets to make our show. I've filled in a few gaps here. Let's just have a look. What have I done here? Here they all are. And I've got myself a couple of colors. I've got a ramp effect. I've got a staggered effect. I can turn it off again. For the washes in my profiles, I can point them at the wall, or I can point them at the singer's head. All off, profiles or washes on. So if I point them at the singer's head or at the wall, I've also made myself a slow panning effect. It sort of goes left to right. And I can turn that off again as well. So I've decided, for the purposes of this demonstration, that's all I need. In real life, when making a show, you'd have quite a bit more in these effects and quite a few more positions and possibly a few more colors. But that kind of has you sort of set up to now start programming cues into executors. Executors, this page, remember? This is where we're going next. So let's have a look. I'm going to set up my executors on screen 4. This is going to be, so if we have a look at screen 4, I've kind of got mini versions of these same faders. Fader 1 to 15, you see, is the same as fader 1 to 15 up here. And we can do the actual operating of this later. And I want all these things to be on that page as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this look. Just press save into here. Okay, yes please. And I'm also going to save that, sorry, here. Number 2. Screen 2, that's the one that I want to go here. So now if I click here, now I've got all those same bits and pieces here, which is great. And then that means I can store directly into these. So let me say I'll set up maybe quite a basic look first of all. Just these washes here pointed at the wall, and they're red. Cyan. Okay, so there they are. And to save that into here, I just simply press store again. So I press S, and then I just press anywhere within here, and there it is. I've now created myself an executor with a cue. I'm just going to clear out of everything, so it's gone. And now if I go on, there it is. If I press off, and it's gone. And that's the same in this page here. On. You see every time, because I've saved it with those washes going from their default position to the wall. That's part of that cue that I've saved here. So when I press on, it goes to the wall, on and off. And also I've got this fader here that gives me overall dimmer intensity. But I'm just going to manage these down here for now. Okay, now I'll set up another look. I might say all the profiles, I want them to be red. Not the profiles, I was thinking the pixel bars, I wanted to be red. And I want them to be pulsing. And that is my next look. So I press store and I'll put it over here. Again, I'm clearing out of everything, turning this one off. So now when I turn this one on, it does that. And when I turn this one on, it does that stuff. And this way I can fill up a lot of faders, as many faders as I like, really. There's countless more fader banks that you get with the fader plus and fader minus pages. Okay, so these faders here that we're looking at, there's like 1 to 15 on this page, which is the same as this 1 to 15. Then there's also 16 to 30, and that's all very nice, but to be honest, that doesn't actually translate that well to the command wing consoles that we have that you're working with initially. What they have 6 faders, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 6 executors, plus 6 button executors below them as well. I'll talk about the button executors later, but you're going to run out of space probably. So what the console offers is what's called fader pages, and you just switch between them, and then you have different lots of 6 faders. And these don't correspond, that the next 6 faders will be 7 to 12 and so on, but they'll be like 101 to 106 and so on. So that's quite confusing initially, granted. And what we need to do about that in order to facilitate more faders that way is we create fader pages in here. So anywhere in our grid space, I'm just using this here because it's still some available space. I'm going to click. I'm going to go to Pools and go Pages Exec. And there's the first page there already. And I'm going to create a second page here, and a third page, and a fourth page. And now, if I go to page 1, we see this here. Then I go to page 2. I see fader 2 here, fader 3, fader 4. So I've made myself 4 pages that I can populate now as I like. I'll stick with page 1 here for a start. And I'm also going to stick this exec page. Okay, so now I've got a whole bunch of executors that I can populate with my different looks. And so I could make, with my various fader pages, lots and lots and lots of executors. And this is probably how you're going to start out working. But you are going to run out of executor space eventually, even if you do switch pages. So it also pays to think of executors of holding more than a single queue. So they can hold, each executor can in fact hold as many queues as you like, and you can skip between them. So let's just see what happens here. So sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong part here. So on. So here, let's just select those washes, and we could say that the next queue that we want to be on the same executor, being thematically related, might make sense. The next one, I actually want them to be yellow. And then I press save and I go into here, and it gives me this dialog box. Choose the store method, overwrite, merge, blah, 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 blah. You can figure out what all these mean, and they're also quite self-explanatory. But what I want to do is I want to create a second queue. And so now, let's look at this a bit bigger with this full executor. When I press the, first of all, I'm going to clear out of here again, turn this off, turn it on, it's on the wall, and now when I press go, it goes to that other color. And interestingly, when I press go again, it goes back to the start of the queue stack. This is a queue stack. And so I can kind of cycle around that as much as I like. I'm going to make this yet another color and store that here as well. So now I've got 3 queues. Let's have a look here. So now, always good to clear out of these looks, because what I've just done, I've just set up a look in the live programmer, and that's not what I want to test when I press my executor buttons. So on, go, 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 go. And that is a typical thing that you'll be doing with executors. Sorry, I should also say, you might have noticed just then when I pressed store, I didn't get that little dialog box again of overwrite, merge, or create second queue. The program now assumes, because I'm creating a queue stack in that executor, that that's what I'm doing, and it doesn't ask again about what I'm doing. It just knows that I want to create more queues. All right, and so then I would make myself multiple queues as I liked. Let's have a look inside this queue stack. So for that, we click in the bottom half of the info box. That's what I was accidentally clicking on before. Here are the 3 queues, Q1, Q2, Q3. What's interesting here is a whole bunch of values in here. You don't need to know all these, but what is good to know is the first 3, trigger type, trigger time, and fade. I'll talk about the trigger stuff later. For now, I'm going to talk about fade. You can tell a cue how long it takes to fade in. And so, for example, if I say this fades in over 1 second, this fades in over 2 seconds, let's see what happens when I click my executor. So on, took 1 second to fade in, 1, 2, and the third one we hadn't set a fade value. Now this fade value, I should demonstrate this with a different type of executor as well, a different type of cue stack. I'm going to make a new one, which is the profiles, and I'm going to point them at the singer's head for a start. I'm going to save this as a cue here in executor number 3, and then I'm going to make it point at the rear wall instead, and I'm going to save that as another cue there. Yes, create second cue. Clear out the live programmer, go into here. So on, that's the first direction, and then after that go, goes to over there, and I go back to up here, and I go back to over there. Now if I go into this cue stack, and I put a fade time of say 2 seconds onto this second one, and 2 seconds onto this first one, and I now press my go, it does this very smooth, slow traversing of the stage space. And in fact, that is one of the best ways to create single shot, one direction movements that go there and they stay there. So not as part of an effect, but to go from one place to the next, is to add a bit of a fade value that gives it like a measured movement across the stage. 2 seconds to get from the singer's head to the back wall, and everything moves nicely and in a measured way. A lot better than you moving the encoder wheel for the pan, for example. So that's the fade value. Let's turn this one off again and go back to this one here. Just to refresh, we've got a bunch of colors here. Let's go into this cue stack again. And let's talk about the trigger type and the trigger time. So at the moment, they're just being triggered by the go button, but we can also make them be triggered by a trigger time. So if I set these to time, they've both got a trigger time of 1 second. I'm going to reset these fade times to 0 so that it doesn't confuse us. What's doing what? Have a look at this. So turn this off first, and press go. There, it went, as soon as I pressed go, it goes through the cycle of all 3 here and ends on the last one, 2, 1, 3. And to do that, even though it ends on the last one, what I had to do here is I had to put the go on the first one. So this time value, or this time command and this trigger time, always applies to what came before. So I'm applying a trigger time of 1. Q2 applies a trigger time of 1 second to Q1. And here Q3 applies a trigger time of 1 second to Q2. And then because it's cyclical, after that it stops at Q1 is the stop point because I'm cycling back through to that one. So it just stays on the red after this one, because this is applied to the previous one, and therefore in our cycle, this go applies to the previous one in the cycle, which is Q3. Sorry, it sounds complicated, and maybe I'm not making it as clear as it could be, but just remember the trigger method and time always apply to what happened before. And if we do the same kind of thing over here, let's just look at this again. I'm going to take these fade times off for the same reason. And I'm going to make just this one here a time. I'm going to make this 3 seconds. So now when I trigger this on, and then it goes there automatically without me pressing anything. When I press go back up to the front, and then over 3 seconds, or after 3 seconds rather, go to the back. Press go, and after 3 seconds, which I'd set, it always goes back to the back. So that's another interesting thing you can do if you want to have a whole sequence of little movements, for example, to do like a coordinated thing. One light does this, then the next light does that, and then another light does that. You program them all with trigger times of whatever, half a second or a second long or shorter. And that way you can create quite complex sequences that are preset like that. And you just press go once and it goes through the whole chain of stuff. So that's what trigger time and trigger is good for.